Charca is about moving together with various stakeholders to empower women. After working for 3 years in 6 districts of India, let's see how this has happened from some of our champions. Durga Devi, peer educator from Kishanganj. Farida Khan, counsellor from Udaipur. Puligamma, self-help group leader from Bellary. Rama Devi, president SHIP, Guntur. Dr. C. Vasant Kumar from Government Hospital, Guntur. Ceylon Thangi, member Positive Network, Aizwal. Zampui, peer educator from Aizwal. Sabir Ahmed, peer educator from Kishanganj. Khurshid Ahmed, teacher from Udaipur. The people you were just introduced to represent the strengths of the Charca project. We will further discover the distinctiveness and innovation of Charca through their stories. But it is perhaps best to state at the outset that Charca's distinctive contribution in its fight against HIV and AIDS lies in its focus on women's vulnerability. Women constitute more than 1/3 of India's population living with HIV/AIDS. Charca's strategy has been to build capacity and create local support structures for women.
Charca has been working over the past 3 years in 6 districts of India. It has costed $5.5 million, and it has been a program which was implemented by the United Nations. 8 UN agencies have been working together, plus the UNAIDS Secretariat, to make this program a success. And it has shown to us that whether we are WHO working for health, or ILO working for fair labor, or UNODC fighting against drugs, for all of us it was a major priority to fight the vulnerability of women. To make this work, we had to work under one single budget with one single secretariat coordinating all the UN agencies. This was a major innovation for the UN. But it has worked and is now serving as an example for other joint UN programs in India.
Charca's vision finds concrete expression in a partnership between the government, NGOs, donors and the joint UN system. It was implemented in 6 districts across India: Bellary, Guntur, Udaipur, Kanpur, Kishanganj and Aizwal.
Charca has been a joint initiative of the United Nations family here in India. We've worked in, of course, in 6 districts, and we've operated through the process of lead agencies and then supporting agencies. As is appropriate, and certainly works the best when we undertake joint initiatives, each agency has brought what it does best to the issue at hand. In the case of UNFPA, for example, in Udaipur district, they had worked on reproductive health as an entry point for work on HIV and AIDS in the Charca program. UNDP has worked to strengthen local organizations, both positive organizations as well as others that haven't had HIV as a focus, to enable them to work better with positive people within the districts in which they had worked. UNICEF worked in terms of mothers and parent-to-child transmission. ODC had worked, of course, in harm reduction and in the work that they do with positive people in the Northeast. In addition to the core agencies that had specific districts to which they were assigned and in which they were responsible, we also had agencies that played a cross-cutting role that provided their perspectives and expertise to all of the districts. UNESCO, ILO, UNIFEM, and WHO played these roles.
The Charca strategy, along with the successful multi-level partnership, marks a value addition to the UN Global Experience. It is the first joint UN program for awareness generation strategy on HIV and AIDS in India.
Charca has really been one of its kind. It is a very innovative way of looking at gender and HIV. Now, it looks at vulnerability to HIV, it looks at vulnerability to violence against women, vulnerability to other forms of discrimination and deprivation that women face throughout their lives. And it also highlights the violation of human rights, the human rights of women. And in case a woman is positive, then this discrimination becomes a double discrimination, which really leads to a lot of stigma and discrimination, which the project is trying to obviate.
With its focus on the innovative use of shared spaces to create interactive encounters where none existed, Charca has made it possible for young women to understand their bodies and their sexuality.
गांव में जब मैं HIV/AIDS के मुद्दों पर चर्चा की तो तब महिलाओं को पता चला कि HIV/AIDS क्या है।
My work with the women of the community has made me realize how women face several health-related consequences due to unsafe practices by their husbands when they migrated out of the village. But through Charca's work, women are now able to speak freely with their husbands about their own sexual health, seek couple treatment for sexually transmitted infections or condom use, which they now understand is necessary for the well-being of their families. In the women information centers that Charca created, women found a comfortable and safe place to access this information. I can say with pride that Charca has been instrumental in the process of empowering these women.
Positive network of Mizoram hian Charca appear jukoi torin ka oma.
Knowledge of my positive status was a source of fear, not just of the uncertainty of the future, but also of the possible discrimination and stigmatization I would face if my status was revealed. But Charca gave me immense strength to deal with my positive status because as a trainer I had to go out and help other people who needed it. Women can now make informed choices, exchange ideas and information, and strengthen their shared spaces. This contributes in filling a massive information gap about issues of sexual health and HIV and AIDS.
చిప్ అనేది ఫస్ట్ ఒక 100 మెంబర్స్తో స్టార్ట్ అయింది.
In Guntur, Charca has not only established care centers but has recognized the importance of securing livelihood for positive people in their well-being. Vocational training, loans to facilitate income generation, and the creation of self-help groups has led to a greater involvement and well-being of positive people. These are telling pointers in an effort for questioning and resisting practices of the established patriarchal social order. Charca addresses the feminization of HIV infection through everyday concerns of women's lives and also by challenging age-old practices such as the Devdasi system.
ಈ ಚರ್ಕ ಅದ್ರಾಗ ನಾನು NHL ಲೀಡರ್
Before Charca, women of the village did not even come out of their homes, and Charca has succeeded in making women a part of the public space. Initially, we talked about personal hygiene, particularly menstrual hygiene, which helped us to build rapport and create a space for us to work in these villages. An example of this is the way in which Charca team members and the community came together to prevent a young 15-year-old girl from being a part of the Devdasi system. From each district, we hear different voices sharing special stories of bridging gaps, raising awareness, and making supportive practices. The innovativeness of district programs is clearly visible. They draw on existing resources in the district, the specific needs of the communities, and work in versatile ways to address these needs.
हमारे VCTC में कई तरह की सेवाएं उपलब्ध हैं जिसमें
Charca had a strong network of PEs who were always present in the villages to encourage the women to avail the services provided by our ICTC. The kind of services provided by our center is youth and gender friendly, and for this reason they come to us.
At Guntur Medical College, Guntur, Government General Hospital, Guntur, we are taking care of these HIV positive women and also the deliveries. Many of the women, they do not know these services are available, and because of the awareness created by the Charca, many of the people started accepting the HIV test, and also they started coming for the delivery for the hospital. To cite certain example, in the year 2002-2003, when we started the project, Publicity project, about 8,300 women were registered in our antenatal OPD, the antenatal case of the pregnant woman. 6,300 only accepted the HIV test. After the implementation of the Charca project in Guntur district, if you take the 2005-2006 figures, out of 10,472 antenatal women who were registered in our OPD, 10,370 women already accepted the HIV test.
I think it's important to realize that when you're talking about the northeast of India, there are certain specific vulnerabilities that arise whether you're talking about men or women. In Mizoram itself, about 6% of injecting drug users are HIV positive. About 14% of female sex workers are HIV positive. So you've got a reasonably significant problem there. We use the peer educator concept. Essentially what they are doing is they're going around with little kits, and they are using the material in that kit to speak to other young women in villages. It's kind of like a barefoot network approach. And so you've got women going, they're paid a certain stipend by us every month, and they go to one village after the other, making network connections, talking to people, trying to convince others. And we find that what is now happening is that the churches and the Young Mizo Association, which is very strong in Mizoram, they are inviting some of our peer educators to actually come and provide training in the institutional setting of a church meeting or a YMA meeting. So the message is getting out. And what I think the UN is doing at this point is bridging the gap between what the educational system is formally communicating in terms of risk reduction and what those young women need to know.
Charca hianin meichhia te ta na malakna chi ran kan neya abik takin kumsom pathum le.
Through the Charca project, the sense of isolation and discrimination from the community that drug users feel has been addressed, as Charca has brought together people from all walks of life to work towards its objectives. Drug users like me have been able to regain some of the lost dignity through the project. Charca adopted a multi-stakeholder approach not only at the community and local level but also at the national level in order to mobilize positive energies to create an environment for women. Various players such as government officials, policymakers and the media were involved in this effort.
And the first lesson, which was very, very important and critical, was that we cannot assume that journalists, no matter whether they are national level editors or block level, district level correspondents, we cannot assume that they know about HIV, they know about gender issues, they know about all that is to be known about gender inequities and equities and the status of women and the vulnerabilities that positive people and young girls and women suffer from. So it means that they need to be sensitized, they need to be given perspective, they need to be given information, and they need to be given an experience of these issues. So this sensitization, we try to make it experiential.
Charca has done pioneering work in the field of dissemination of HIV messages. They have organized excellent exhibitions. In the recent past with UNIFEM, they have helped us in developing an online resource bank for IEC, which will provide ready-made prototype materials and will be certainly very useful for all the partners. I am sure that the work done by Charca in the field of IEC, particularly in dissemination of HIV/AIDS messages, will be very useful in future for all those who are working in the field of HIV/AIDS.
The community's response in each of the districts has been overwhelming. Equally noteworthy is the government support that Charca has received. Government's coordination with NGOs and UN agencies allowed the synergies and learning between districts to be shared, facilitated and coordinated at state, national and international levels. The NACP3 will continue with this district-based intervention model targeting women, youth and children in special settings.
During NACP2, mainstreaming was not really considered to be very important as a strategy for preventing the disease and reversing the epidemic. So therefore, the UN agencies did come together and took up 6 districts in the country where they implemented this scheme, which is now called Charca. And the concept of Charca was to be able to expand outreach into the communities by using the infrastructure available with key departments of the government, namely like Panchayat Raj or Women and Child Development Program infrastructure and so on, and education and so on. So therefore, we found that on a quick review that we have done, though of course a more comprehensive evaluation is now underway, that the benefits have been spectacular. I think a lot of the sensitization that several departments were able to get through the Charca program in a very short time was really very positive. And therefore, now we have adapted these lessons into the NACP 3 program, and now mainstreaming is one of our very key strategic interventions that we are implementing under the NACP 3, and we do believe that by engaging with all the different departments right down at the community level, we would be able to make a substantial significant contribution to not only disseminating information on primary prevention to the communities, but also ensure that bring in behavior change which would go a long way in reversing the epidemic. So I think the Charca program has been a very positive step and a great learning experience as we unfold and scale up the intervention now to be implemented throughout the country under NACP 3.
Government bodies apart from civil society organizations, religious organizations and Panchayati Raj institutions have all been catalysts in this change. Charca has also used the traditional and charismatic authority of religious leaders to create awareness on the issues of sexual health and HIV and AIDS.
HIV और जैसे मुद्दे हमारे समाज में आ रहे हैं, फिर उन लोगों ने
In a society where religion has a stronghold over people's lives and talking about sexual health is taboo, we felt that religious leaders are important figures. If we convince them about the Charca message and the need to generate awareness about HIV and AIDS and related issues, they could be effective messengers for the community. Charca was successful in this strategy. Maulvis and Pandits spoke about the issues after the regular prayers at the mosques and temples. There was a growing acceptance within the community about the needs to address these issues. Charca has involved and sensitized key functionaries from within the village, including the Anganwadi workers, ANMs and Panchayati Raj institutions, who were then responsible for spreading the message on HIV and women's vulnerability in the communities. Through this effort of Charca, people who are migrants, tribals and illiterate are reached with crucial information on HIV prevention. Charca had initiated several culturally relevant activities in the communities, such as the Kishori Mela, which are going to be sustained through involvement of community-level stakeholders. Charca project has learnt valuable lessons which can contribute to the national response on AIDS. Good practices and lessons from Charca orchestrate with the strategies and approaches under NACP 3. This aims at reduction in the rate of growth of HIV infection among women and girls and increasing access to accurate and comprehensive information related to HIV prevention.
The way forward, I see it in very simple and straightforward terms. There are two things that need to happen. One is that we need to continue the project in some way, shape or form. And secondly, our social partners, government, churches, Meso Association and so forth, they also need to embrace these issues and and ingest the spirit of what Charca has been able to achieve and let that be replicated in the society itself.
Charca's greatest achievement in terms of its sustainability, because the way we have handed over the entire activities in Charca project to the partners, whether it's in the civil society organizations or in the government sector, that will definitely take all the initiative that we have taken during Charca project cycle to a long distance. And secondly, in NACP 3, we see strategic utilization of all the knowledge tools and the strategies that were evolved during the Charca project cycle. So I see the entire work of Charca going further beyond the closure of the project, and as such I don't see it as an exit, rather that as more of a handing over of the Charca strategies to our partners.
More than 2 decades into the epidemic in India, Charca is a significant model that offers many lessons and achievements to take into future programming in our fight against HIV and AIDS in India.
Charca has been evaluated and it has been proved it has made a major difference. What is important also with the program is that the last month have been organized in such a way that Charca would be handed over to the authorities that the whole work which has happened with the UN support was going to continue and be completely mainstreamed within the national program. We also see that there are private partners who say that they would be part in continuation of Charca. And it is clear for me that Charca has been a success.
We're taking the Charca experience to the Northeast for our next joint program as the United Nations. In this case, we're working more closely with the National AIDS Control Program. We will be co-located with the Northeast office for NACO to be able to get our response, one that is very well integrated within the work of the governments within the Northeast as well. Again, we're going to be using the experience of the United Nations, working closely with the states to identify what are the needs, and then bringing the results and the resources of the United Nations to bear on the particular problems as they are there within those states. We are very much looking forward to this closer relationship with the government of India and the states, so that all of us can indeed be working as one to deliver the best product that we can for the people of India.
Reach out now. Join the fight against HIV and AIDS.